Good afternoon, everybody. It is January 1st, 2023. Happy New Year to everyone. Happy New Year, James.
Happy freaking New Year.
Oh, man. Not loving college football right now. I'm not going to lie to you. I love college football, but today I hate it. Rough game last night, to say the least, for my Buckeyes. I'm still not over it. I don't know if I'll ever be over it. I'm not happy, but I'm here. And we're going to break down everything that's gone on in bowl season. We're going to discuss the Buckeyes game and at nauseum today. We're going to really dig into it. We're going to talk about some of the other bowl games first. And then in the 30-minute mark, we're really going to dig into the Ohio State-Georgia matchup and also the Michigan-TCU game, which obviously TCU came away with. Wasn't real unhappy to see that. Because if my Buckeyes aren't going to win the title, then I certainly didn't want the Wolverines to win. So I'm not going to lie to anybody about that. I wasn't crying when the bell rung on that game. My question to you, and obviously we're going to talk about all these games later, but the no targeting call in the Michigan game and the no target. I mean, we've watched college football for 2 years now. Anytime that the crown of the helmet is involved in the tackle, it's a targeting. And now, in two of the most crucial plays of the national championship semifinal games, it's not targeting. And I don't even know what targeting is anymore. Do you know what targeting is, James? Can you tell me when a play is going to be called targeting and when it's not? Because I certainly can't.
We need a definition. Honestly, this is the most. I mean, honestly, when Harrison got hit, first of all, I was shocked that ball was in play. As soon as that ball left Stroud's hands, I'm like, that's 10 rows into the freaking seats. And then it starts coming down. I'm like, did he catch it? Like, because they panned back so far, and then you saw freaking Harrison laying on the ground. I'm like, is he knocked out? Like, is he just done? I mean, he wasn't moving. Like, I've never seen coaching staff run over there that quick to him. I was really concerned. And if that's not the definition of targeting, what do we do? I mean, is it now, depending on what the situation is, if it's targeting or not? I mean, I honestly think if you're going to grade one against the other, what happened against Harrison should have been called even before what happened against McCarthy.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing about the Michigan situation was there was no reason for that guy to stick his head in there. I mean, the guy was already tackled. The game was over. That was a really dumb play by number 2 there.
Yeah.
Because there was no reason for it. The guy was tackled. The game was over. And sticking your head in there like that was just stupid. And my whole thing is, I've seen targeting called time and time again, and then it was like everything that could have been potentially targeting in these 2 games was not. And I just don't, I'm so confused by that. The consistency behind the targeting rule is just what's really bothering to me. I mean, it's either targeting or it's not targeting. There has to be some consistency across the board, and from what I've seen, there's not, and that's just brutal, especially when it costs teams ball games. But there was many more calls than that, and we'll get into each one of them as we move ahead. But I do want to talk. First off, it's kind of weird this year, and this is something that I wanted to ask you about. Sunday, New Year's Day falls on a Sunday. Can you ever remember a time in your life where we're on January 1 and there's no bowl games?
It always happens this way. Whenever the NFL will trump out, if the Sunday falls on New Year's Day, they will move all the bowl games from New Year's Day to the day after. I mean, God, there is plenty of times where there have been big games on January 2nd and it just doesn't even feel right. Like, honestly, even when the games are being played, like yesterday, when the Sugar Bowl was played at 11 Central, like, that didn't seem right to me. Like that
No.
game is always a 7 p.m. Central game kickoff.
Yeah. No, I just, it's weird. I just always remember January 1,
Yeah.
Bringing out the splicer and having 3 or 4 TVs sit up and sitting
Yep.
there all day on the 1st of January watching all the bowl games. And now today it's January 1 and there's no bowl games. But,
Yeah.
And I guess I kind of realized all this when I was watching the Orange Bowl and the Tennessee Clemson game. And I'm like, why is the Orange Bowl on the 30th of January? So
exactly.
That was very confusing to me. But let's talk about that Orange Bowl for a second. Obviously, I'm here in Knoxville, Tennessee. The Volunteers have not had a season like this since 2001. Casey Clausen, Dante Stallworth. It's been a while, and I've got to be honest. It was fun. It was nice to see the Vols pull it out. I'm happy for them. I'm proud of the team and the way they played. You've got to give Joe Milton some credit. He stepped in and played a really good ball game. But I think the biggest takeaway from me, and James, I'd like to get your take on this, but the biggest thing to me of this game was Clemson's inability to score inside the red zone or inside the 30. They got inside the Tennessee 30-yard line 7 times to start the game and had 6 points. And I didn't really, was it play calling? Was it the Vols defense stiffening up? I'd love to get your take on why Clemson had no problem going up and down the field, but could not get any points out of it. Obviously, their kicker missed 2 field goals. That was, not good, but it didn't end up proving to be the difference. The difference to me was their inability to score touchdowns when they got real close.
Well, I mean, it's unusual that Potter would actually miss a field goal. I mean, that guy's usually been as consistent can get. But I thought all the problems went away the second DJU left Clemson. And now we're starting to realize Dabo wants to bring back Clemsoning. It's people have forgotten about it from the Deshaun Watson years and the Trevor Lawrence years. But I think we got to bring the term back because, I mean, you look at Kate Klubnik, 30 for 54, 320 yards passing, but it was 5.9 yards per reception. I mean, that's just awful. And 2 interceptions. I mean, you can't put the ball in the end zone. The part that blew me away was Joe Milton. I completely forgot how big of an arm that guy has. I mean, it was like, you remember those old Nerf balls with the tail on the end? I mean, it looked like he was throwing these nice, easy passes, and they were going like 60 yards. Like there were no effort in his throw. And he's just whipping it.
He might have the biggest arm I've ever seen of anyone. I don't know if you saw the video, but he threw an orange at practice out of Neyland Stadium. He took an orange, they videoed it, and he threw it the length of the field over 100 yards. Did you see this?
No, I didn't. I gotta see that.
I wish I had the video here because I didn't think to clip it. But he took an orange when they were practicing for the Orange Bowl and threw it over 100 yards. And when it landed, it just exploded because of the velocity on it. I mean, I think he's coming around. He's gotten a lot better under Josh Heupel's tutelage, and I think he's got a real chance to be the starter next year. And we'll get into that. I want to ask you about that in a second. But do you think, for my first question to you is, did Dabo's reluctance to put Cade Klubnik in and to insert him as a starter, did it end up costing him this game in the end?
No, I don't think so. I mean,
you don't think if he had played more football this year that he would have been cleaner in this game?
I mean, you could always go back and play Monday morning quarterback, but then look at DJ's first 2 games when he first started. I mean, crap, he was slinging the ball around like he was freaking Peyton Manning. I mean, and then after that, he became a shell of himself. I mean, honest to God, calling this game 30-14 is being nice. If you can't get the ball, you can't move the ball inside the 30. What good are you? I mean, if you're going to sit there and trade touchdowns for field goals, you're gonna lose. You got to put especially in this day and age, you got to put the ball in the end zone.
I agree, and that's why I think that if he had gotten to play a little bit earlier potentially and gotten more reps under his belt in games, I just feel like they could have potentially, he could have been better in this game, I feel like. And I kind of felt like they went away from the run a little bit too much.
Yeah.
The Shipley finished with 17 carries for 72 yards. Cade ran a lot, but a lot of that was, running for his life.
Yeah.
On the edge, because the Vols did a pretty good job of getting after him. I've got to give the guys credit on the Tennessee defense, because they did, stiffen up and did a pretty good job in the secondary. This defense got shredded against Clemson's biggest rival, South Carolina. And I have to say, this looked like a completely different team. Aaron Beasley, in my opinion, was the MVP of this game. 12 tackles, 2 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, a pass defensed. He stepped in for Jeremy Banks and really, really took over this game. And I thought he was quite amazing to me, and really looks like a guy that could play at the next level. But I don't know. I don't know what to say after watching this. I think Tennessee is definitely headed in the right direction. Now the question becomes, is Joe Milton the starter next year, or do they turn to the kid and hand it over to Nico? And I've got to be honest with you, I would not take Joe Milton out of the lineup right now. What do you think about that move?
I personally, quite frankly, Joe Milton has experience. Don't get me wrong. I think Nico's got an incredibly live arm, but do you really want to throw a true freshman into a situation like that? If the longer you can wait on that, the better off you are. How often have you seen true freshmen get thrown in and excel right away? Heck, JT Daniels is a perfect example. And now he's at Rice?
Yeah. Where's that guy that was arguing with me about how he's going to be a first-round draft pick still?
Well, he could be in the Canadian Football League draft. There's a really good possibility he could be playing for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers sometime in the future. Saskatchewan's probably going to be looking for a quarterback soon. Yeah,
there's no doubt. He may make it somewhere, but I don't see it in the NFL.
I don't.
That's the reason. This is the reason that we've got a problem a little bit with the portal, is the 4 teams in 4 years. That's absolutely ridiculous. But the point is, the Vols won. They now, took home the Orange Bowl trophy. They finished the season 11-2. They've got, all their fans have to be proud of this team. The collapse at the end there with the loss to South Carolina, they could have easily thrown in the towel, especially with their quarterback going down. But, they didn't. And, they ran the football, had over 124 yards on the ground. They threw the football. They played defense good enough to win. And, I'm looking for big things. I think Tennessee's just going to keep getting better. We've talked about it before. They don't even have the 85 scholarship players allotted on this team, because they're still trying to fill up roster spots from the mass exodus when Jeremy Pruitt was gone. So, I'm looking forward to them getting better.
Plus, you bring back Brew McCoy, Squirrel White. It's not because you lose Hyatt and Tillman that you're going to see a big downgrade. Quite frankly, the receiving corps is going to do a phenomenal job next year too.
Yeah, they've got some freshman kids coming in as well that should be good. Let's jump over to the another team in the SEC that was able to win their bowl game, and that, of course, is the Arkansas Razorbacks. One of the wildest bowl games maybe that I've ever seen.
Yeah,
and definitely one of the biggest games of runs that I've ever seen. Arkansas started off, 24. Were they up 24-7?
Yeah.
And Kansas, came storming back. Ended up tying the game at the end there by scoring 2 touchdowns and 2-point conversions and collecting an onside kick in the process. Ended up going 3 overtimes. What the hell was happening in that Arkansas-Kansas game? What did you take away from it?
Well, I mean, we've said it all along. I mean, what is going on in Lawrence right now is just short of a miracle. And if you didn't see this incredible run by TCU, people would be talking about Lance Leopold a lot more. And we've been talking about him, man, forever. And people were laughing at us, like Kansas. I mean, come on. But everywhere Lance Leopold has gone, he has won. I mean, they're way ahead of schedule right now. Now they just got to develop that defense. But I mean, heck, with 3:15 left in the third quarter, you're down 38-13, and they storm back and put it in overtime.
Yeah.
I mean, this is Kansas we're talking about. And they went to double overtime against an SEC school. I mean, it's amazing Kansas was in a bowl game, for Christ's sake.
Especially considering the year they had last year.
Yeah.
The improvement from one year to the next is something that I've never seen. And they definitely turned it around big time. And I think, there's going to be some good things coming out of Kansas here in the future. And you've got to give credit to that quarterback. I mean, Jaden Daniels was unbelievable down the stretch. 37 of 55, 544 yards and 5 touchdowns. And I got to be honest, I saw this Arkansas team who, had more offense in this game than they had in the last 7.
Yeah.
I was a little disappointed about the rest of the season after watching what Arkansas could do when they had to score. They seemed to be able to do it. And so I kind of was wondering about some of those lackluster performances, but that was definitely a pretty amazing game to watch. But I think one of the best games of the entire bowl season was the Holiday Bowl. For some reason, the Holiday Bowl is always good.
Yes.
And it always seems to be a great game. And this year was no exception. You had Drake May versus Bo Nix in a pretty good quarterback battle. Have to be completely honest. That was one of the best games I've seen in any bowl, anytime. What did you think about Oregon versus UNC in the Holiday Bowl there?
I got to say, if I'm Bo Nix right now, I know he's coming back, but go pro.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, your stock is never going to be any higher. After what happened to you from your sophomore and junior year in Auburn to what you've done to turn around this year, I mean, quite frankly, if the Oregon State game wasn't like a complete disaster, he could have been in New York for the Heisman ceremony.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, how crazy is that just to even say out loud? Bo Nix could have been up for the Heisman. 23 of 30, 205, 2 touchdowns and interception. But I mean, a name that people, like, we've talked about this guy last year. I am a huge fan of his. Marquise Irving, known as Bucky. 13 carries, 149 yards. The former Gopher, now Duck. Wow. I mean, this kid, you line him up in the slot. You put him back at tail. I mean, I don't know how you cover this guy. I mean, I remember seeing film of this, and I'm like, he's a slower version of Reggie Bush. His kid's hips are amazing.
He was damn good, and he dominated this game, especially in the first 3 quarters. They kind of had to go the air a little bit more at the end. And yeah, I'm with you. Bo Nix was phenomenal. And the way that he led that team down in the final drive there was unreal. I think, if I was him, he's played in college football for over 4 years. I would probably take it to the NFL if I were him, especially just risking injury like that. I mean, maybe he's got good NIL money set up. Maybe he's got an insurance policy on himself. I have no idea, but I don't think his stock is ever going to get higher than it is right now, especially after that Holiday Bowl win.
I mean, would you take him over Anthony Richardson or Will Levis?
Oh yeah,
I would in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah, I think he is definitely better than a lot of these guys they have projected to go in the first 3 rounds.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do I think he's a first-round draft pick? That might be stretching it.
Yeah,
but
right.
I think he's a second or third rounder.
Agreed, 100% agreed.
Guy you take a flyer on and try and develop. Especially with the way that the NFL has changed and the way that they've moved more into the RPO systems all across the league. I mean, you look at the Eagles. the way they've run their offense with Jalen Hurts. I mean, I could see Bo Nix running an offense very similar to that and having a lot of success.
Agreed.
So we'll see what happens with him. Maybe he changes his mind. I don't know, but he seems pretty dead set on coming back, and I'm not sure that's the best move to him. But we need to talk about a couple more of these games, and one that I want to get into is a team that's been criticized over the years for not winning bowl games, but they were able to pull this one out in the Notre Dame South Carolina bowl game. I couldn't believe it. Notre Dame pulled it out, and their defense was on the field at the end, which I think is fitting. But their defense wasn't great. Their quarterback, their head coach is supposed to be a defensive-minded kind of guy. But this was more about offense. This game was, and their quarterback, as I was about to mention, Buckner, had a pretty decent game considering he hasn't played since September. What did you think about Notre Dame pulling out the Gator Bowl with a win over South Carolina?
I mean, when Mayer and the D-end, and I can't remember his name, both opted out, I literally thought Notre Dame was dead man walking.
Foskey? Are you talking about Foskey?
Yeah, Foskey, yeah. I thought they were going to have to run the ball, play old school 1970s, 1980s football to win this game. And Buckner threw for 274. I mean, I was shocked. I mean, especially with no Mayer, I was shocked that they were able to pull this one out. I mean, because let's be honest, Notre Dame is really good in the trenches. Where they struggle is their receiving core is really not deep. I mean, let's be honest, they're not deep at receiving core, and their D-backs have traditionally not been that good since Lou Holtz.
Yeah, no, I agree. But, they were able to still run the football in this game. Yeah. They had over 264 yards. Estimate 14 carries, 95 yards. Logan Diggs had a good day. And Buckner ran the ball pretty well, too. Had 2 rushing touchdowns, over 60 yards rushing. Was pretty impressed with him considering, he hasn't played since injuring his shoulder in the Marshall game. I mean, that was a long-ass time ago, and I've got to give Marcus Freeman some credit because this team has definitely improved, and they've had some ups and downs. You looked at game 1 against Ohio State in the Horseshoe. They played a pretty good game. They were winning up through the third quarter. You have to give them credit for that. They played well, and then they kind of collapsed at the end. But, then they fall to Stanford. They lose to Marshall, and you're just like, oh, my gosh, this is going to be Charlie Weiss all over again. And
that California game was big. I'm not going to lie. That California game beating Cal, which people call that like a throwaway game. I'm sorry. When you're in quicksand, it's hard to come out of that. And he found a way to make them do it. I mean, it wasn't pretty, but they did it.
Yeah, that was a big win for them. And they got a couple calls down the stretch in that game that went their way and maybe shouldn't have. But regardless, they won that game and that turned their whole season around. And you could say the Gator Bowl's meaningless, but to me, it wasn't meaningless for this Notre Dame program. I think it was big for their whole program moving forward. What do you think about them, as looking to the future for the Irish?
Well, I quite frankly, what Marcus Freeman's done in recruiting has been pretty impressive. I consider this an incredible upgrade to what Brian Kelly was doing. I think the big question mark is going to be at the quarterback position. And if Sam Hartman commits, I think you're going to see probably the biggest upgrade at quarterback in some time in South Bend. I mean, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, there's we talk about it all the time in the NFL with tampering, and seems like there's a little tampering going on in South Bend because before Hartman even entered the portal, there was talk of him going to Notre Dame. Now nothing's been official yet, but I think that's pretty much a done deal. And they've got a quarterback coming in through recruiting as well. And I'm not sure about Buckner's future, but if they have those 3 guys battling it out in the spring and the fall, I think that position will be heavily improved. To say
completely.
The least.
They got to get faster on the outside, though. I mean, that's the key. Is they got to get, especially if Hartman does come. He can't throw to himself. I mean, if he could find a way to bring A.T. Perry with him, I mean, that would make things a little bit better for him in South Bend.
Yeah, there's no doubt. They have to get better on the outside, and they need some playmakers. They had a couple guys go down before the season even started. They've had a bunch of injuries at wide receiver, but they weren't that deep there to begin with.
No.
So that's something they definitely need to improve. One more game I want to talk about before we get into the college football playoff, and that is the Alabama and Kansas State getting down in the Sugar Bowl. Game was very close at the beginning. In fact, Bama's defense was struggling to contain Deuce Vaughn. It's, believe, what was the score? 10-7. The Kansas State was down inside. The red zone's 4th and 2. Instead of kick the field goal, they decided to go for it. They get stopped. It seemed like ever since that play, the momentum completely shifted. The Kansas State defense got thrown back out onto the field, and they just never recovered. Big game for Bryce Young and Alabama. What did you think about this one?
I honestly, the momentum completely changed in that game at that very moment. If Kleiman would have kicked the field goal, taken the lead, and played field position, we'd be talking maybe a different game. But man, from that point on, all Alabama did, O'Brien kept running these deep crossing routes, and their D-backs could not pick them up. I mean, just constantly. There were big pass play after big pass play after big pass play. I mean, Jermaine Burton really probably had his best game all year yesterday, wouldn't you say?
Oh, it was the best game of his career.
I in some ways, I forgot he played for Alabama because he was so non-existent this year.
Yeah, their receiving core is definitely, not performed as well as I thought they would this year with some of the guys they had. We talked about a lot of their younger guys who have still yet to step up. But Ja'Cory Brooks had a long touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back, had a couple catches for 66 yards. Jermaine Burton. But the big difference to me in this game was, Bryce Young. Bryce Young proved to be the best player in this football game.
Yeah.
And he was just not to be denied. And, they've had Kansas State's had some, pretty good luck throwing out Will Howard, and replacing Adrian Martinez. But this game, it wasn't really good. I mean, 18 of 35, 200 yards, 2 interceptions. Was not a good day for Will Howard under center. Did you think?
Oh, God, no. God, no. I mean, honestly, it just like the game completely turned at that very moment. I mean, a name I think people are going to have to keep their eye on, and he didn't really have that great of a game, but you just watch the way this guy tracks is Isaiah Bond, the freshman. Yeah. I think he's going to be their next big stud, and I think you're going to see bigger numbers out of him next year, depending on who's playing quarterback. I mean, the freshman out of Buford, Georgia, I think he's a different dimension than what you've seen in Tuscaloosa. I mean, he's smaller, he's very quick. I would say almost in that Devonta Smith kind of thought process.
Yeah, there's no doubt, but I've got to imagine that, if the first team in the NFL draft is a team that's lacking a quarterback, I have to imagine they're going to go with Bryce Young, don't you think, especially after this performance with 5 touchdown passes? Oh,
he's going number 1. I mean, he might as well buy a house in Houston right now. I mean, he's going number 1 in the draft.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how, if you do not have a franchise guy, you can pass on this dude after the performance. I mean, he's been solid all year. Let's be honest. I mean,
his composure is so unbelievable. I mean, for a guy that's 21, he's got the composure of a 30-year-old. Like, he's been playing this game his entire freaking life, and everything just goes slow for him. It's really impressive watching him because he never seems rattled, no matter how big the situation is. I mean, look back at the Tennessee game. I mean, he kept them in that game because Tennessee could have really dropped the hammer on him. And look what he did. I mean, kept him in it constantly, over and over and over again.
Yeah, he was legit, and that's the biggest thing. The biggest takeaway for him is he doesn't get too high, he doesn't get too low. He just has a really even keel kind of feel to him.
Yeah.
And he just does his thing, man. I mean, he's not a guy that gets overly emotional. He's not a guy that gets, too up or too down, like I said. And that's a good thing for a quarterback. I mean, he's just always on to the next play. And he's elusive. He's tough to sack. And he's got a really accurate arm, in my opinion. And I was real impressed with the way he played. I mean, he only had to throw it 15 times. He threw it 21, but he only had to complete 15 passes to score 45 points.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive if you ask me, and something that I think needs to be looked at.
Too often guys look at the metrics way too much. And Bryce Young is not a metrics guy. I mean, he's 6 foot, $194. I mean, Kyler Murray is probably the last guy that probably somewhat, and he's a little bit smaller, but otherwise we're always looking 6'3" or higher, 230 or more. I mean, he's not that kind of guy, but I mean, you look at it from a temperament standpoint, I guarantee he's the guy that's probably first in the building looking at film. When he has his sit-down meetings with Bill O'Brien, I guarantee you he's got a freaking a pad of paper ready to go on clips of plays that he wants to talk to him about the next opponent, rather than O'Brien teaching him.
Yeah, I agree. It was pretty impressive, and I think he locked himself up as the number one quarterback taken. But we'll see if Bama can bounce back and get back to the top. It looks like Georgia's kind of replaced them, and now it's time to dig into it. I'm going to bring in our guest here. Hey, Jeff, can you hear us, buddy?
Yeah, now I can. You guys are breaking up a little bit. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We hear you pretty well. Thank you so much for joining us today. First and foremost, how you feeling after that ball game last night?
Lack of sleep. Don't think I got to bed about 2:30 and woke up, I don't know, 7 o'clock. Was replaying about every big play in the game in my head. It's hard to sleep.
Yeah, I mean, I as a Buckeye fan, I can't really be upset with the team. I can't really be upset with the coaching in this game. I mean, they played really hard. They scored 42 points. I mean, the defense at times was not where it needed to be, but all in all, I mean, I think the Buckeyes came to play. But, just down the stretch, after Marvin Harrison went out, it was tough to score points. And I think, to me, that was the biggest play in the game, the reverse targeting where that went from a touchdown to a field goal, and they lost Marvin Harrison. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, there were so many big plays. That'd probably be number one. Where I was at, I didn't really have good replay availability. And I think I saw it once about 2 a.m. on Sports Center. And I don't know what you guys thought, but the social media reaction was it was definitely targeting. But I couldn't tell from the quick replay I saw. But what did you think? Was it?
I mean, based on what I've seen before and the targetings that I've seen called all year long, yeah, I mean, he lowered his head and struck his, Marvin Harrison's helmet. What did you think, James?
I thought the same thing. I mean, I'm shocked he even got up. I mean, when he went down, I'm like, bring a card out, because I've never seen coaching staff run out there that quick.
Yeah. Well, the thing I could say is it was called on the field, I believe, and the review overturned it. Where when you overturn something like this, we've been through this countless times. The Clemson game 3 years ago in Phoenix, same thing. When you got to overturn something, you better be doggone sure you got it right. And, they're supposed to give the benefit of the doubt now for protection and safety of these kids. Yeah. But bear in mind, not only losing him, it would have been half the distance automatic first down. Instead of getting 3 points, I think they had first and goal on the 3.5 at that point, it would have been. And the chances are they're going to score a touchdown there, and that's 4 more points. They'd have won the game even if Marvin's out with a concussion if they make the call properly. And the second one was on Georgia's 4th down. I think it was 4th and 6 down there. They originally spotted it short and overturned that. I never once saw a replay. What was your opinion of that?
I saw the replay, and his hand was like his left hand was over the line. Oh, sounds like we're losing him.
Yeah, no, I mean that was a play that I think, was tough to judge. I mean, that spotting the football to me is the hardest thing about being an official, and especially on a big play like that. So, who knows? But the thing to me that really, I think was the difference in the game was all of these calls in their totality. And when Jeff comes back, I want to ask him about that. The 4th and 1, the fake punt, that was a huge one to me because the ball had already been snapped. The guys were moving, and hey, Jeff, you got it? Can you hear us? You may still be cutting in and out of us, but yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The totality of all of these. You got us?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay now? Yeah.
We got you. We were just saying that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we got you. Yeah. We were just saying that all those calls together.
No doubt. But when you go back again, the point I'm trying to make is there's 2 calls made on the field, and the spot was the second one, and you add in the targeting, and they reversed them both. And they're not, that's not what replay is for. It's got to be very distinct and an obvious mistake. So if the spot was 50-50, you go with the call on the field. But I've seen so many missed spots this college football season, and I saw a lot of them in the bowl games. I mean, if you see a line judge and a side judge come up from opposite sides of the field, sometimes they're a yard apart. And it just so I never did get a shot at that. But yeah, the fake punt, this goes back to the Michigan game. I don't know if you guys knew or not, but on that 4th and 5 at Michigan's 43, the score is 24-20. There's 6 minutes left in the third. CJ's waving the punt team off the field. Remember that play?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so the reason Ryan wanted him off the field was he had a fake punt dialed up with Mitch Rossi. But the long snapper, and maybe you've talked about this, I don't, stop me if you have, but the long snapper double clutched. They get a 5-yard penalty, and now it's 4th and 10.
Yeah.
And he keeps it on. He keeps the play on. Well, the long snapper somehow got confused and snapped it to the punter. Well, if you look at the film, if he snaps that to Mitch Rossi, he might still be running.
Yeah.
So they kept it. And it's very crucial. I bring this up. They kept it in for this game. Well, Kirby Smart would have seen that on film, that they had it dialed up and screwed it up. Secondly, the guys in the booth for Georgia noticed it right away, and they're talking to him in his headset saying, call timeout, call timeout. Whether he got it or not in time, I don't know. But Ryan Day and the special teams coach, they just need to disguise that a little better. They were overloaded so far to the right. Nobody was out there. You want to give them a look like you're in regular punt formation, and then if you have to shift at the last minute or run somebody in motion and then run the play, you'll get it because it's wide open. But don't come out. When you look at that formation, it's so obvious what they're going to do or could do. And if you're going to do it, snap it right away so they don't have time to call timeout. But that was one of the plays of the game. If they get that first down, I think they were up by 11 at that point, I believe.
Yep.
They just needed that knockout blow last night, and they couldn't get it. And that was another one.
The next play is when Aaron Smith, when
fell down.
Smith had when Raysom fell down and he went deep.
Right.
Yeah, that was.
And they've had so many busted coverages, but I mean the Michigan game and last night. I mean, when you look at the numbers, it's ironic. Both quarterbacks were 23 of 34. I mean, that never happens. They both have the identical numbers, but Bennett threw for 398, and they just gave up way too many passing yards.
Yeah.
And as the game went on, they stopped the run a lot better and better. But that's secondary. To win a national title, you just got to get better in the secondary.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the first thing that needs to be addressed in the offseason is they have to shore up the corners. Denzel Burke played pretty well as a freshman, and he seemed to get worse this year and never really played back to his freshman form. And then, but I still have to give credit to the offensive staff. I mean, you think about it, Travion Henderson didn't play in this game. Jackson Smith and Jigba didn't play in this game. Cade Stover goes out in the first half. Marvin Harrison Jr. gets knocked out. They were running out of weapons, Jeff. I mean, I thought they did pretty well considering the lack of offensive firepower that they had.
Oh, no. Yeah, right. The offense didn't lose this game. I mean, that's the game plan I expected to see on November 26th. is throw the ball downfield and feature Marvin Harrison. I don't know where it was a month ago, because that was one of the worst game plans I've ever seen when you have 364 days to prepare for revenge. But no, the offense didn't lose this game. They came out and did what people have been waiting for them to do. It's emphasized their skilled talent, and CJ had a great game. The offensive line protected him. They rolled him out at times. He evaded people at times that he hadn't always done in the past. He tucked it and ran a couple times. That final, the final series to get down there for the field goal. No, the offense did its part. It's just you got to stop people. And I was disappointed in the pass rush. They got some studs on that line of scrimmage, JTT and Harrison and so forth, and they just didn't get to him enough. And what Jim Knowles did against Michigan, he did the total opposite last night. It's like he was shell-shocked. They needed to bring Tommy Eichenberg and a couple other guys and mix that up. Stetson Bennett had way too much time. And so when your secondary's suffering, like, you got to help them out, and you got to narrow that time that he's dropped back there and he has to look around, especially that final drive. They had 2:49 left. Boy, you should have taken a shot there. A sack might have put that game away. And there was one play over the middle. I think he hit the tight end where Zach Harrison's coming around the backside. He needed a split more second. That was going to be a strip sack. And he just missed him and just didn't get to him. But they needed a sack. And I would have dialed one up, at least maybe one or two, those final two series, to try to get it and put the game away. And he did it over and over against Michigan, and he didn't succeed. But he needed one last night. They stayed back in coverage way too much for my taste.
You brought up a great point about the line of scrimmage play, especially on the O-line, how well they handled Jalen Carter. I mean, that kid comes off the ball so well. I mean, Stroud, honestly, I think helped his draft stock considerably last night.
No doubt.
I think you would have said maybe 8 to 10, 8 to 12 in the draft, and now he handled that pressure really well where what were your thoughts being there from, the environment? It was kind of hard to tell. Was it that Georgia environment or what, and how he handled
No. It was very difficult to tell because of the colors. There's so much, the whole stadium. I would guess when there would be a big play for Ohio State up and a big play for Georgia, I would guess it was probably, this is a wild guess, 60-40 Georgia, because Ohio State had its section completely full. Georgia had its section completely full, but there's a lot of those independent tickets that were snatched up by Georgia ahead of time because they knew they were going to be in Atlanta. Ohio State didn't find that out until December 3rd or 4th, whatever it was. But no, Ohio State represented itself like it always does for a big game. Back to CJ. No doubt he helped himself. He answered every question. They're talking about Bryce Young's going to be the top pick. Jalen Carter might be the second. Of course, it depends who's doing the picking. Houston's going to be number one, I think, or Texas, whatever they call them now. Houston, Texas. And Bryce Young's got every tool in the book except size. I love that kid. He's a leader. He got a great arm. He is so doggone small, but I guarantee you, as much as they put premium on quarterbacks, after Jalen Carter, somebody that needs one will move up to get CJ if they don't have that top pick. He's not going to last past the 5th pick. Yeah. And all these guys like Tom Shea that had him going down a little bit, he fixed all that last night. So I don't buy it. I think he's going to be a high pick. That's supposedly the nation's toughest defense, best defense has been for 2 years. And you saw what he did against them. And, the offensive line protected him. He rolled out, but he threw some dimes last night.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he also, ran the ball, which he hasn't done, throughout his career and has been kind of criticized for it. Last night, he took off several times on some designed runs and a couple scrambles. Hell, that last play where he got us down in field goal range, that was a hell of a run.
Oh, it's great. Who would have thought he'd be their leading rusher? But he was. Yeah,
he was. I think that was part of the problem, though. Down towards the end, I think we could have won that game if we could have run the clock out a little bit, but we had no Mayan Williams, no Travion Henderson. Dallin Hayden played a little bit, but not too much. What did you think about the run game yesterday and how it was used?
Well, my game plan, Tim May and I talk about this a lot going into the game. What my game plan would have been was almost what they did in the first quarter. I said the first quarter, I'd go 2-minute offense. I wouldn't even try to run the ball. I would try to use your strength and come out with 2 minutes and throw to wear these defensive linemen down a little bit. And once you soften them up or, get them thinking pass with the linebackers dropping, then start blending in the running game. And for the most part, he did that. They can win a game by rushing for less than 100 yards when CJ's sharp like that and they're giving him time. You don't, there's the old adage like Urban always wanted to be 50-50, or he wanted to have 300 passing yards and 200 rushing yards. That's all well and good. But when your strength is throwing the ball and you have Marvin Harrison and other receivers they can't double, and Ibuka and so forth, there's nothing wrong with dropping back 3 times as long as you're getting time in a series and just keep chucking it. And you just got to score almost every time you got the ball against Georgia because the defense is so bad. I mean, the secondary is so bad for Ohio State. So I got no problem with that. And then mix it in the run on short yardage, 2nd and 2, 3rd and 1 when you need it. But on first down, throw the ball. And I got no problem with that at all. You don't need to be 50-50 balance when you got the talent Ohio State has at receiver and quarterback, at least this year, last year, just like the Rose Bowl last year. If you look at that, you can beat teams that way. You can beat good teams that way because that's your strength. That's why I had such a problem with the Michigan game plan, because it's like he forgot who my best player was.
Are you shocked? Because obviously they were picking on Keely Ringo quite a bit in that game. Are you shocked when they, close to the end, when they lined up Xavier Johnson, they ran that slant to Johnson when they could have probably done Ibuka or Fleming trying to get some yards before they did the kick?
Are you talking? Yeah, you're talking about after CJ scrambled to the 31?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. What I would have done there, I kept saying, I was telling somebody next match that they need 10 yards. If you get to 21, that's a 38-yarder. A lot of kickers, when you get from 45 on out, they try to hit it too hard and they mishit it. And he hit a 40, what did he hit earlier? 47-yarder in the game.
Yep.
So I was looking for a play where you could get 5 to 10 more and then center the ball. You had 2 timeouts. So you got time to center the ball with, even if CJ takes a snap, takes a couple steps to the right because they were on the left hash, then you put your knee down and do it. So on first down, he runs to the boundary side. That's the problem I had. I don't mind a running play because I know what he was thinking. I got 2 timeouts. Let me see if I can pop one and get 5 or 8 yards. And they were in zero coverage, which means they were going to come after him. They did the last 3 plays. So on first down, I don't know why you run in the boundary. You got too many defenders over there. Give him a pitch to the right side where you have the whole field because he's so quick he can make a cut and find a little alley. So that's the only problem I have. Not that he ran the ball, but he ran the wrong side. Second down, that's the play you're talking about, I believe. Yep. And he had tight coverage on him. I think it went off his hands, if I remember. There's so many big plays. Third down, CJ panicked a little bit. He still had time on the clock. If he keeps rolling to the right, he's got that little out. I don't even remember who the receiver was coming back to the ball. That's another 8 to 10 right there. He just chucked it out of bounds because he was in his head. He was, don't take a sack. Let me get rid of it. We'll kick the field goal. He should have played that play out a little more. And he had a guy there, and I don't even know who it was. I mean, the whole thing's a blur to me. But so that leaves him with a 50-yarder under all the pressure. And I've seen it once, and I didn't know if the hold where he had his hand too low in the hold, or he just tried to hit it too hard. You guys tell me what happened on that. He didn't hit it well at all.
His plant foot was way too close to the ball. You could tell he was trying to make sure he had the distance. And I mean, it happens so much late in games.
Yeah, it's exactly what you said. I think exactly what you said earlier. They were a little bit, further, 50-yarder. He was trying to get a lot on it, and he just completely mishit it. I mean, it wasn't
right. So the previous one that gave a 6-point lead, I believe, was a 47-yarder. It just barely went over the crossbar. So that's in his mind. So now he's adding 3 yards, and you'll see it in college, especially how you see it in the NFL a lot. When guys are out there beyond 48 or 50, they just try. It's like a golf shot. Instead of just hitting it true down the middle, they're trying to kill it. And when they do that, they mishit it, and it always goes. If you're a right-footed kicker, it always goes to the left. So, and it was a knuckleball coming off his foot. So, but somebody said his reaction toward the holder wasn't good. I didn't see that. But when I looked at the hold, and I shouldn't even say this, but I thought maybe his left hand was a little bit low, covering the ball too much. He didn't get a chance to get it off, get it high enough. And I'm not even sure that's correct to say it. I saw it one time, like I said, and so I don't know. Those guys that don't come in, I don't think anybody ever even talked to Ruggles after the game last night, from what I heard. So you don't always get access where you can get the truth. In the old days when I covered I used to cover Florida State and Florida back in the day. It's open locker rooms all the time, even at bowl games. You know, a kicker misses a kick like that, you feel bad for him, but you got to go up to him and say, you know, I'm sorry, but tell me what happened. You get it right away. Now things have changed like that. You don't get access to know what the heck happened after a game.
Yeah, no, it was a shame, but I thought the Buckeyes represented well. The other playoff game, that ended right before us was obviously the boys in blue. What did you think about the clock management from old Jimmy Hairball down the stretch there? It seemed like Michigan had a chance to win that game at the end, but I felt like he just let too much time run off, especially having those 3 timeouts.
He's speechless.
I think he's frozen.
Yeah, he's frozen.
Oh, okay.
But no, you're entirely right on that. I mean, but Grant, at the end of the day, I mean, let's talk about the 2 pick sixes. And the first one, I mean, heck, let's be honest. That corner, I mean, that linebacker was breaking on it prior to him coming out of the, prior to his hand getting out of the ball coming out of his hand on that out. In the second one, he's sitting there waiting for it. He was just reading his eyes.
Yeah, I mean, McCarthy had a decent game against Ohio State, but a lot of that, I think, was more the defensive backs for the Buckeyes. I don't think, he really did anything special. He just had guys wide open. And yesterday I felt like he got exposed a little bit against a TCU team that's defense is a lot better than I anticipated them to be. I think we just lost him. But yeah, I mean, I have to give credit where it's due. I thought TCU played really well on defense, especially in the second half when their offense struggled a little bit and had trouble, getting first downs. And I felt like their defense was on the field quite a bit at the end of the game, and they stood up. So once again, Sonny Dykes, this is his first year there, James.
I know.
Year 1, he's taken the TCU Horned Frogs to the freaking national championship. And, let's be honest. I mean, he's had it. It's not like they just got thrust into the final game. They've earned their trip to the championship game. And I think the coach deserves a ton of credit for what they've done.
Well, I keep going back to our interview with Franklin a couple weeks ago, and he gave us more insight than I ever thought of with Coach Dykes in really how he's built that program. I mean, in 1 year, he has taken them to the national championship game, like you just said. I mean, Max Duggan was having heart surgery last year, and he was sitting in freaking New York. I mean, what he has done from a culture in Fort Worth is phenomenal. And it'd be interesting to see how he keeps moving on this, especially under the new Big 12 with Texas and Oklahoma leaving.
Yeah, there's no doubt. There's no doubt.
I think we're getting Jeff back.
I think we got him.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. We were just wanting to get your thoughts on the on Harbaugh's late game heroics there for the Wolverines.
That first quarter determined, I know it played out the way, but the first quarter, they bust the run on the first play. They get down there, and J.J. McCarthy makes an awesome play on third down to get them 4th and goal at the 2, and he runs the Philly special, which he doesn't come up with anything. And then I thought the other big play was they hit the touchdown pass, and another what I call bad review. I thought that's a score.
Agreed.
He lands with his butt in the end zone. He gathers it in. How you overturn that, I will never know. I know what the guy's looking at. He's looking at his knee down the half yard. Doesn't have the ball yet.
Yeah.
So that should have been a touchdown. They come away, fumble the next play. Those 14 points he left on the board, or at least 10 points, they're playing from behind all night because of what happened there. But he's got to be as heartbroken as Ryan Day. Both of them. They just, there's an inch either way in these games. They're playing again for the title, and those are hard to get over. But I didn't know down the stretch what he mismanaged. I was in the stadium at that point trying to keep up with it on some big screens, And did he screw up the clock management the last 2 series?
Well, he had 3 timeouts left, and TCU had the ball, and they were just trying to run the clock out.
Yeah, I did. He waited too long to take them. Correct, on defense.
Yeah.
And I did see that. Yeah, you got to take those on defense, knowing every first down offense stops the clock. But man, I'm telling you, I see these college coaches. Heck, I see NFL coaches all the time mismanaging their timeouts and the clock, and whether to go for it to put a team away or make the other guy use all his timeouts and then punt. It backfires all the time. I mean, I saw Sean McVay do it with the Rams a couple of weeks ago when he had like 3rd and 4 to put the game away. If you get that play, the game's over. You take 3 knees. And instead, he knew the opponent had 1 timeout, so he ran off tackle to make him use the timeout. And, they talk about analytics, but if these football coaches, they're not Mensa candidates. They're not that brilliant at the times where if you just knew ahead of time, I need 4 yards to put a game away and take 3 knees, or I can make a guy use his 3rd timeout and punt it to him. That's a no-brainer. I take that, and of course, it depends how many seconds or times on the clock. But if it's over 50 seconds with the way these offenses move now, you got to try to get that timeout, put the game away, as opposed to I want him to use his 3rd timeout. That's why they invented the sideline. And in the college game, the clock stops after every first down anyway. That's ridiculous. So these guys, I saw the whole bowl season, guys mismanaging that. It's just, I don't know what it is, but it's they do it all the time. So Jim not taking them on defense, I don't know if they even questioned him about it or not. I was surprised how upbeat he was in that press conference from what I saw.
Yeah, no, it looked bad.
Do you think that Philly special play has been so overused since that Super Bowl?
Yeah, people know about it now, and that's right. They had it covered in Philadelphia when they used it in the Super Bowl. Nobody had seen it before, and it was so successful. Then everybody started copying it, and I've seen it be successful sometimes now, and now I've seen it be unsuccessful. But no, I mean, the TCU covered J.J. McCarthy right from the time he started to drift to the right. And what you need to do if you're going to run it now, is drag a tight end behind it. So if the quarterback's covered, you got a second option. Last night he didn't have a second option, tried to run it, but that was a huge play right off the bat. But yeah, you're right. And then I've seen people run it now from the other side. They'll flip-flop the field now and try to run the Philly special the other way. So, but you're right. It's saturated now. These guys are copycats anyway, so they always try to take a play from somebody else.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, that game obviously didn't end the way that we all wanted it to last night. But what do you feel like the Buckeyes have moving forward? I mean, you saw recruiting end, the first period end a couple weeks ago, and now obviously they're heading back to Columbus. What do you feel about this season as a total, and how do you feel about them moving ahead now after this loss?
Well, one thing I think about, and because I'm so damn old, probably I'm 60, about to be 63. I started as a fan following Ohio State about that 68, 69 season. My first trip in the Horseshoe was 69 spring practice. But Tim May and I were talking about this a couple of days ago, and he was he's covered the beat since 84. So from 68 to 84, I know a little bit, maybe more perspective of Ohio State than he does. But he doesn't understand why the fan base so frustrated Ryan Day after the Michigan game. And, that he is 45-5, now 45-6. I understand that perspective completely. But what I tried to tell him was, I said, let me ask you something. I said, if you remember, and I go back to 68, they win a national title, the Rex Kern. The very next year is what I call the Bo game, Bo's first game against Michigan or against Ohio State. And they carry him off the field. They upset the number one team, and they're celebrating and blah, blah, blah. And that was one of Woody's best teams. He always said it was his best team. And I said, bear in mind, since that moment, I asked Tim, how many all the great teams you've covered, all the great teams of Ohio State, how many national titles have they won? And he's doing the math, and I said, I'll tell you, it's 2, 2002 and 2014. So from my perspective, Alabama, this is a real big picture, but I like to say it anyway, but Alabama claims 13 national titles. Ohio State's got 5. They might claim a couple more of those wire service or not in that magazine titles. They got 5. And they are an inch or two or a play or two or a one game or two, and I can name the years, from having about 18.
Yeah.
And I'm not kidding you. You can go, I'll name the years. 69. 73 was the best defense they've ever had. They tied a game, 10-10 tie. And then they kicked the crap out of USC out in the Rose Bowl. That team should have won. 75, they're number 1 the whole way through, and they get beaten UCLA in a rematch. That's another one. 79, when I'm in school, Art Schleister's team, that team was dominating USC in the Rose Bowl for the national title and kept kicking field goals in red zone and got beat 17-16 on a final play drive with Charles White. And then I go to the Cooper years, 94, 95, 97, all national title teams. I'm sorry, 95, 96, 98. I got that wrong. 95, 96, 98. 1 loss each year, 2 to Michigan in a row, 95, 96. And then 98, Michigan State comes in with Saban, upsets them. Number 1 that year. And then I go to the Tressel years. They win 1 in 02, which now looks like an anomaly to me. And then you got 06, they're number 1 from wire to wire. Urban beats them. 07 next year, they go down and have to play LSU in New Orleans. They jump out 10-0. There's another game. But I'm going. Then you get the Urban's year. He wins 1 in 14. And 15, they're the best team. And he has a terrible game plan at home against Michigan State, gets beat on the final play kick by a backup quarterback. And then you go 19. That I still believe, if those weird things don't happen against Clemson out in the Fiesta Bowl, that they go down to New Orleans and beat Joe Burrow, because the way they matched up with him with the corners on his receivers. And then 2020, they play Alabama. They had the COVID issues going. Literally, you can count the years where they should have had at least 5 to 8 more. So my thing as a fan, as I tell Tim, I said, I think some of the older people get frustrated. Like, here we go again. It's almost like Heartbreak University when it comes to this program. They always contend because of the tradition, the fan base, the recruiting base. They're always going to have the best coaches, the best facilities. You're always going to contend. It's just getting over that hump and avoiding that heartbreaking loss, i.e. last night. Because they win that game last night. Don't tell me they're not a 10-point favorite against TCU to, and how would you like that? You lose to Michigan in the horseshoe the way you do and come back and win a national title. I mean, that would just would have been glorious for Michigan fans.
I would have been okay with that.
So anyway.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, it's they've had plenty of chances, and I agree with you 100% on that 2020 team. You know, that there was 3 touchdowns. They get called back in that Clemson game, three huge plays. And it's I kind of equate that to the game last night. There was the 4th and 1 fake punt, Kirby timeout, the Marvin Harrison hit, the 4th down call, those 3 plays. You know, you change those plays around just like you change those plays in the Clemson game. You know, the Buckeyes win the national title, in my opinion. So it's
agreed.
It's tough to deal with, but I can't be too upset as a fan, at least, about the performance last night. I mean, surely we'd want the defense to be a little better, but you got to be happy with the way the offense played.
Well, could you imagine if that 2020 year it was LSU Ohio State? I mean, the game would have been over 100 points between both teams.
Yeah,
it would have been freaking a track meet.
Yeah, but Jeff's right. I mean, that at least that year we had the corners, that could match up with those guys. I mean, this year playing with these guys, no way. But 2020, you're talking Denzel Burke and a lot of guys that could cover anybody.
Was Okudah still there?
I believe so. That sounds right, because it was the 2019 team. So yes, it would have been Okudah.
Yeah,
Burke may have been gone, but I think that was Okudah.
Yeah,
and also Damon Arnett. So
yes, Arnett. You're right.
Who was a first-round draft pick as well. We had 2 corners taken in the first 18 picks. So you throw those guys in, it could have been a different ball game. But yeah, I mean it's tough. And I understand the frustration, but you can't go out and want to fire this guy with the way that. He's
that's throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, heck, remember way back when, way long before we did the show, when Tressel lost to Purdue, when Purdue was during one of their bad streaks? I mean, I remember I was in Columbus during that time period, and all you could hear on the talk shows was that they got to fire Trussell. I'm like, the guy won you a national championship. And if Day would have pulled it off and won the Natty, no one should ever say that to him again.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a great coach.
He's a good coach, and he's done a great job since he's been there. And, I hope they can get back, but it's going to be tough for them next year. They've got to go through the quarterback change again. They're going to have to figure out, Devin Brown, Kyle McCord. I assume that McCord will probably win the job. But it's going to be tough. They will still have tons of talent at wide receiver. I mean, Igbuka's going to be back. Harrison's going to be back. And hell, they got 4 of the top 50 players in the country at wide receiver.
Isn't Fleming back too?
Yeah. Fleming's got another year under him. So he'll be back too. And it doesn't really matter who's going to play quarterback next year. Ohio State's going to have the horses out there as far as receivers go. There's going to be no way that anybody's going to, be able to cover them. I mean, they got Brandon Inniss, who's a 5-star out of Florida. They got Noah Rogers, who's the 4-star, 5-star in some rating systems out of North Carolina. They got Carnell Tate, who was the number 1 wide receiver at one point and ended up being still in the top 10. And then they got, our boy, Bryson Rogers, who is also a 4-star. So they got 4 guys who were all, in the top 50 at the position. So, they're going to be tough to cover no matter who is throwing the football, but just a tough way to end the season. And, it's not like Georgia didn't already have, a little bit of a head start on them with playing the game 69 miles from their campus, but then you give them every call and overturn every call. It definitely made it a little bit tougher for them. And then losing Harrison like that was kind of the nail in the coffin.
The Harrison loss was huge. I mean, honestly, Harrison if there's one bright spot for Harrison, not having JSN here this year in Columbus, really helped out Harrison's draft stock even more when Harrison does come out. I mean, I think he's once again in that probably 7 to 12 pick in the 2024 draft, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I agree. I think we got Jeff back here.
Hey, Jeff, we were just talking about. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. I'm popping in and out. Are you done with me? I gave you another try.
No, you're good, man. You're good. We appreciate you joining us. And we were just talking about, the receivers they recruited for next year. We're not sure exactly, probably McCord will be the quarterback, but whoever's back there is going to have a lot of options to throw to with these freshmen coming in.
Yeah, I guess I was getting to that point. I gave you that big picture thing on Ohio State history, which you probably didn't care about, but looking forward to, they're going to have a new quarterback next year. So you never know what you're going to get. They're going to have them battle out in camp. And, the history of college football, you look at not many national champions are starting a first-year quarterback, and plus they got to go to Ann Arbor with the first-year quarterback. But by then he'll have 11 starts under his belt, whoever it is. But Ryan Day, I don't think he understands all the run concepts he could use. And if you're going to coach in Columbus, Ohio, in the Big Ten, you have to realize in November you're going to get 1 or 2 games where you can't throw it around the ballpark like he wants to. So you better have a plan. So last year at Michigan, and that was a defensive issue as well, I realized. But this year at Northwestern jumped out at me, and he threw 26 passes that day. And I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing? And then the Michigan game this year, what are you doing? And I hate to be one of those guys that criticize a guy that's 45-5, but he says some things once in a while, like, he's still young. He's 43. He's only been a head coach 3 years. And last night to me was encouraging. It was very encouraging.
Yeah.
Not just the way they played. I think he gets it. I think he gets it now. Don't hold back. He got a second chance here. Don't hold back. let your talent overcome, maybe some of these other things. I'm restraining them playing not to lose. And I've seen coaches do that when they don't have talent. When you got a ton of talent, throw it out there. I like to say, like after the Penn State game, hey, their 5-star talent, that Penn State game overcame their 3-star coaching. Yeah. And JTT, and I see that a lot. But last night he let the talent, he unleashed it, and that's what you should do. But I don't know what happened in the Michigan game, that he just played it so close to the best in a lot of areas, and then Jim Knowles didn't adjust. But they should have. There's no reason they shouldn't have the best coaches, the best recruiting. They got to get this NIL thing figured out. Losing a couple players down the stretch because of that thing. It's I've covered college football since 1980, and what's going on now with NIL and the portal, I mean, it's just ridiculous. They're ruining the integrity of the game. It's very, very discouraging. Yeah. But, no, I think they're going to be fine. And, if they keep the staff intact and keep recruiting, it hurts to lose to Michigan. But last night, showed the program is in a good place. I think it's too bad they didn't win, because I'm convinced they'd have won a title. And nothing had been greater than, you lose to Michigan, they go win a national title. And he's always going to recruit well. It's just he's got to win a big game now pretty soon. He's 45-6, and it's sad to say that people could put him on the hot seat. And let's not be ridiculous. They're not going to fire him. No. So the question is someday, if an NFL job comes along, will you want to stay there? And the same thing Harbaugh might face here in the next week. Yeah.
Yeah, his name's already being talked about for the Denver job.
Yeah, Denver and Indianapolis, I would guess. But I don't know how in love with Jeff Saturday, Jim Irsay is. But those two jobs, he played at Indianapolis. He's got his name on the corner of that stadium in there. Yeah. But Denver too. So, and there's no doubt about it. No matter what Harbaugh says, he wanted that Vikings job a year ago. Thought he had it. Yeah. And he said a couple wrong things in the interview that raised their antenna about control, I guess. And then he backtracked and said, no, I want to be at the University of Michigan the rest of my career. Well, that might just last a year if he gets a good offer from Denver. So who knows what's in his mind. But I do know that, because he said it before, driving to win a Super Bowl, getting to win a Super Bowl is a driving force in maybe, his career. Because he might realize, even the great team I had yesterday in college football, I got too many hurdles to win a national title. Maybe a Super Bowl is easier for him. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I hear you, but I agree with you 100%. I feel like yesterday was encouraging, and watching the way that the game plan was put out there and the way that the players responded to it was very encouraging, because I thought there was a hell of a offensive game plan put out there by Ryan Day, and the offense was certainly not the problem. The reason.
They just got to shore up this defense. They got to sign some good defensive backs, and I think this last class, I believe they lost a couple. So I don't know. It's frustrating if you're an Ohio State fan.
No doubt. All right. Well, hey, Jeff, we really appreciate you. We know you're traveling today, so we appreciate you coming on and talking about the game with us, because we sure wanted to get your thoughts on it after what happened.
No problem. I apologize. We got to tell you, one thing doesn't mix well. It's AT&T cell service with the state of Florida. The state is so damn flat that you get down to one bar or lose your signal because you're not up high enough. And I just happened to go through two of those spots in North Florida, so I'm sorry for that.
Hey, no worries.
No worries.
We appreciate you coming on and taking the time to talk to us a little bit.
And get some rest, all right?
Oh, I'm tired. I hope I make it home. Let me check. I got 6 hours left, so I'll get there eventually.
All right, buddy. Good luck. We'll be in touch,
you.
All right?
Happy New Year, guys.
Happy New Year,
Jeff. Thank you, sir. All right, man. That was Jeff Snook coming live to us from the car. Sorry about the technical difficulties, everybody, but I did want to bring him on today and get his thoughts. As he said, he's been watching Ohio State football since 1969, first time he went to a game. So he knows a lot about the Buckeyes, and obviously been very close to the program, writing over 5 books and doing the biography of Urban Meyer and what it means to be a Buckeye. So if you haven't read those, go check them out. And we want to thank him for coming on today. But we got a couple more games coming up tomorrow. It's kind of weird, as me and James said, with no games on the 1st. But we do have more football, a couple more football games coming tomorrow, and then obviously the national championship, Georgia, TCU. James, final thoughts on the title game? You taking the Bulldogs?
You gotta.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, granted, if Sonny Dykes can pull this off, I mean, there's probably no greater story ever in probably modern day college football of a team coming back like this to win a national title. I mean,
yeah.
I can't think of one.
Yeah, and I was trying to think what kind of, I mean, the turnaround between last year and this year for TCU, I mean, night and day, right? I mean,
completely. TCU was a mess in the locker room. I mean, they were just going through the motions because you could see Patterson kind of, I wouldn't say worn out his welcome because Gary Patterson's a hell of a coach.
Yeah, he's a legend.
I think they kind of tuned him out, and they needed a new, fresh blood in there to help change things out. And what better person than Sonny Dykes? I mean, he recruited all those same players. He knew about them. He had a relationship with them. I mean, all they had to do was basically teach his playbook, which honestly, I mean, he took Max Duggan, who was not even starting, who had a heart condition, and put him in New York.
Yeah. I think back to last year, November 26th, TCU takes on Iowa State in Ames and goes down 48-14. Okay. And that's how the season ends for the Horned Frogs. They're 5-7. They just get shellacked 48-14. Now, Breece Hall was still playing for them. Brock Purdy was still behind center. So it was a decent Iowa State team, but they'd had a rough year.
Yeah.
And Iowa State had not lived up to expectations. So going from that 5-7 team that lost 48-14 to Iowa State to now be in the national championship, one of the biggest turnarounds in college football history, in my opinion.
Agreed.
So we'll see if he can get it done. I hope he does. I'm cheering for the Horned Frogs. Go Frogs! Because I'm not a fan of Georgia and never was, and certainly I'm not now. That this one's going to take a while to get over, but I'm not going to be upset with the boys. The kids played hard. The coaches did their best. They definitely need to fix that secondary for sure, and give up a few less big plays because that was a problem last night. I mean, the defense held up pretty good against the run for the most part, but there was a couple plays where there was just the hole was so big. When those linemen got to the second level, there was just nobody there. And that needs to be fixed. But they've got Knowles there. I think he's a capable defensive coordinator. I think with another year in his system, getting some more guys that he thinks can help will improve that. And hell, they're going to have 8 NFL wide receivers on the team. So even if the defense sucks, they'll be able to score points, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we're gonna call it on that. We'll come back and break down the national championship game after it occurs, and we will wrap up another college football season.
All right, man.
All right, bud. Take it easy. Keep your chin up. Go Buckeyes.
Talk to you soon.
All right, bud.
Later.